What's going on, guys? Welcome to the 100th episode of the Snapchat. We've made it 100 episodes every single Monday. Haven't missed one yet. And today, we got a banger as we talk about the brand new spooky season, Symbiotes Everywhere, 7 new cards coming to the game. And Alex and I are going to break our ratings down, the synergy, and what we think about all these new cards coming to Marvel Snap. We also have a brand new game mode in high voltage that brings a new card that you can earn. Alex and I will give our thoughts on that, and you combine all that with kind of a lackluster OTA, and we're going to talk about all that today and more on this episode of the Snapchat. And as always, I am joined by the one and only Mr. Alex Kocha for not one, not two, but 100 episodes every single Monday going on 2 years, man. What a super cool episode, and it happens to back up into almost our 2-year anniversary that we have some special plans for, man. How you doing on... I would say special, but you know, it's an ordinary Monday, but it's 100 in a row.
Buddy, this is, what do you mean it's ordinary? This is extraordinary. I honestly cannot believe that we've done this for 100 weeks in a row. You and I together, never missing a beat, through thick and thin, through traveling, through family, through everything that we have to do, we get this done. And you know why we get it done? And I know you must feel the same. This is what I look forward to every week. Okay, Marvel Snap could be long and gone, but I want this. I want Cozy Snap, Alex Kocha, talking with each other, even if we're not even recording anymore. Just these moments for me are so special. Man, 100, I can't wait for the 100 more, and the 100 after that.
I was going to say the power of friendship, which sums that up. Yeah, I mean, the power of friendship, and none more than today. I mean, we just said through thick and thin. For those... I was going to say, for those that don't know, no one will know this. My son is in the hospital, so I am actually sleeping in a hospital chair right now, and it's crazy. So I drove home doing this real quick. But again, we don't miss Mondays, and we can. How can we miss the 100th episode? We're going to do a big celebration. We're going to do a lot today, but instead, because given the circumstances, that's all going to be on, it would be, what, the 104th episode? As that would be our 2-year mark, my man. But that doesn't mean today is not going to be a good one. We've got the new season. We're going to be ranking the old season. We got a lot to break down in Marvel Snap. Lots to break down in general game modes and game to challenge Snap potentially with maybe Pokemon Pocket. We'll see. But Alex, we know what we're talking about over here. What are we talking about over there?
Cozy, on my side of the Snapchat, we're going to be doing our September in review. We ranked the cards, we discussed the card. Now we're going to hold ourselves accountable to our initial rankings. Then we're going to be talking about the best token shop buys in Marvel Snap today, what you should be spending your tokens on and adding to your collection. And then, as always, Cozy, our Snapchat mailbag.
We have not one, but 7 new cards to talk about today, so we do need to hop just right into it. Anti-Venom starts us off as a Season Pass card, as a 2-cost, 4-power card. On reveal, set the power of all of your cards in your deck to 4. And listen, all of these cards this season are a bit on the more tricky side. I think this one is a good one to kick it off. It's kind of the opposite of Bass, but gives you 4, and not in your hand, but in your deck. And so we've got a Season Pass card that, at first glance, looks kind of limited, and I think I've seen that sentiment amongst some of the player base here. But initial star rating before we jump into everything with Agent Venom.
I expect this to be a 4-star card. It is limited in its application, very niche. But like, if you think about its effect, like, this is very strong, extremely strong, right? Now, obviously, it only impacts the deck, not your hand. So it has that kind of limitation to it as well. So it has like double limitations. You got to draw it. It only hits the deck, right? So if your Iron Man, for instance, is in your hand, it's not getting impacted. But if that Iron Man is in your deck, like, that's a pretty big hit, right? I think there's a lot of synergies we can be talking about, but we always come back to the idea that cards with relatively low power often have disproportionately powerful effects. And so now you're adding that 4 baseline power to cards in your deck that you're drawing into. I mean, there's a lot of cards that benefit from that.
Yeah, I think this card is going to be... So you said 4-star. That's right. I had it at 3.5. I'm probably going to land at 4 ultimately for it as well. I think it's going to be good, but not super popular after this season. Like, we've seen cards like this before that even though they do great things, it will be pigeonholed. There's going to be a lot of cards that benefit off this. There'll be cards in the future that do that. But we've seen people, the player base, the casual player base doesn't like to be pigeonholed into certain cards, and they don't want to see that, you know, negative effect of having 4 power, and all of a sudden their Odin, their Red Hulk is now brought down to said power. And this might be one of the least probably newer player-friendly cards as well. Just some of the synergies we're going to talk about today. There are some obvious kind of pull 1, pull 2 synergies, but that is something to note of. the cards that I was looking at, the synergies I was looking at, there are some definitely spicy ones, but let's go and kick on into it. Now, I think the first one everyone just wants to talk about right away, and I just want to have a base discussion around, is Cerebro. I know that people are like, hey, Cerebro, this could be awesome. It could set your power to 4. You could do some, kind of neat synergy stuff. In my opinion, Alex, I don't know if you disagree. Like, we've never seen Cerebro have its own meta. It's always kind of in and out because of all the things that can go wrong with it. I think this will be a nice kind of boost to it. C4 being probably the worst of the Cerebro family, if you will, or at least the common Cerebro family. So let's just get that out of the way. I think it'll be nice for that deck. I don't think it's going to boost it to crazy proportions.
Yeah, Cerebro doesn't need Agent Venom. Cerebro needs a Season Pass card that says at the start of the game, F all locations, basically, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's basically what it needs. It needs to just negate all that RNG that it tends to happen, not even to mention the amount of junk and the amount of toxic we have going on right now. I do think that there will be some brews with Cerebro. My early kind of experimentation with Cerebro has me trying to say bring Onslaught to 4 power, which I think would greatly benefit both the Mystique and the Cerebro itself. However, it's worth noting that, like, you're not going to play Agent Venom and put a whole bunch of larger cards in the deck. You're going to maybe take a chance at some of the lower powered stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Like a Luke Cage, I think would benefit from this, right? Because Luke Cage just goes up and never goes down. But then again, then you can't run Onslaught in that deck. So then all of a sudden you're like, well, what do I do? You know what I mean? So it's kind of awkward from that standpoint.
Yeah, and I think, it's cool in a world that we'll have, access to Sarah. We know Claw is a very good card that can work in Cerebro. There are some very interesting, Makari is a free one that can be played down. Like, don't get me wrong, there's going to be some cool stuff, and maybe C4, because it has access to things like Leech as a tech card, maybe there's, a universe that does become hyper good, but, obviously there are the locations. That's the biggest problem, as you alluded to.
Yeah, Miss Marvel as well.
Yeah, Miss Marvel too, obviously being huge, was a big factor in C5. But never mind that. Let's go and talk about the other synergies. And really, I sorted by power here because this is the easiest way to do it, right? We want to look at some of these low... Let me turn this off here. We want to look at some of these low power guys and which cards are really going to benefit the most from Agent Venom. And the more that I was doing research and the more I was going through synergy, I got excited. I got excited with some of the cool stuff that can kind of come from this. So right off the bat, for me, I feel like at its core, Surfer might be a pretty interesting card for this, given all of the cheaper-esque cards, that it has.
Yeah, actually, Surfer, I think, is a definite beneficiary. Surfer has been missing that, like, really good 2-costed card. There was a while where, like, a Sebastian Shaw Surfer deck was simply just running Okoye there, but Okoye has, like, that's not the best card, right? Like, you draw it on 2, you're like, hey, that feels good. But other than that, it's not great. Jeff was often a stand-in. We've seen Goose metas as well. But if you think about that, Agent Venom can definitely get in there. Realistically, it doesn't even impact Sarah, right? As you said, unfortunately, Sebastian Shaw won't get boosted, but Brood does, Sage does. Maybe it brings up Rogue. You could have something like a Storm, a Wolfsbane. There's a lot of different 3-costed cards that really love that additional power. Like Wolfsbane into a Brood location, starting at 4, and then getting the boost across. Like, that's actually massive power,
Yep.
right? Make no mistake. So I do think the Silver Surfer could potentially be a pretty strong spot for it.
Yeah, and I guess to rewind back a little bit, like looking at its base mechanics, like A, it's a 2/4, so you have a good stat line like across the board. It is a card that you need to have on curve, but we've seen that happen. Like, if you play it late, it's not the end of the world, but also if you play it on 2, you can have that massive effect. If you get to play it on curve, you get 4 different cards that benefit from it. And so when you're deck designing around this card, you're probably going to want to include most of the cards in the deck to benefit from it, right? I mean, that's going to be the angle for how you're going to deck design with the card. But because it has the 2/4, that's also just good to be able to play out, if you don't end up drawing it. Opposed to like a Pixie or some of these other just cards that are a little bit off. I would say Wiccan, but 7's not terrible. That is just a little off if you play him late. Agent Venom's not the worst if you can't get his full effect.
Yeah, so there's a lot of cards that like really need to be played on curve. This is one of them, and I do think it's a strike against this where, like, something like Jeff, even you could hold Jeff to the end of the game, slide it into an interesting location or whatever, right? There's playability there that's important, and I brought up Okoye before. That's a great example of a card that feels great to play on 2 and absolutely awful as you move off it. And Agent Venom's going to be no different. Thankfully, depending on the style of deck, I mean, even if you happen to play it on turn 5, there's a chance you top deck something that's impacted, right? Even if it's that Brood or whatever. whatever. And generally speaking, you're gonna have like some alternate plays. Like you never build around a new card where you're like, man, if I don't draw this card on 2, my whole strategy falls apart. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that you have to consider with Agent Venom. But other than that, like I still think that like although you want to play it on 2, you know what? I take that back. I don't know if I want to play it on 4 or 5. I think that might even be too late. But I'm just saying that you still might get a little value of it, but obviously not the same.
What standout cards? Obviously, we have decks that, have a lot of synergy, but stand out like right away. Obviously, we look at Bass cards, right? So like Iron Man is clearly a favorite, going just up to 8 power, in the lane, no matter what. That's going to be fantastic. Any other just standouts?
Yeah, Mystique would definitely be a beneficiary as well. Thena is another good one. Now, obviously, Thena is a 2 cost as well. However, with Thena, I often find myself playing her on 3 anyways, because with Thena, you'd have to top deck her, but I often find myself playing Angela and then Thena Kitty. That was kind of the way I would play those lines, because obviously she benefits from having 2 cards be played at once, whereas Angela you can play on top, right? So having Angela out on 2, I think was a little beneficial. With Agent Venom, Thena would have to get top decked, so that's not quite as good, but still something worth considering. I have a little bit of a cope, and that's Havoc. Havoc's not generally played on turn 2, but starting at a 4 power, and then if played on turn 5 with like a wave, like we've seen those types of builds before. Maybe that could be something that has a bit of an impact. And then you have Sage. I could keep going. Cassandra Nova, baby. Imagine Cassandra Nova being top deck, starting at 4 and then draining. That's pretty solid too.
Yeah.
Cozy, I don't want to take all of them. So
No, you definitely listed. Yeah, you listed a lot of good ones there, man. I think to me, right, like I just happened to put out a deck when I think Madam Web came out, or maybe it was Aranya, but someone was like, wow, this will be great when Agent Venom comes out. And then I was looking at it and I was like, oh yeah, for sure. So Small Soldiers was the name of the deck. And really, the highest cost card in it, I have 1 4 cost in Shang-Chi. Everything else is below 3 cost, and they're all small cards, right? Like Human Torch, Dagger, Madam Web, Kraven, and Doctor Strange, U.S. Agent. These are all very small that you can build up through the movement synergy, and then you have things like U.S. Agent and Shang-Chi to kind of counteract the bigger power. And so I love the idea of kind of what you alluded to. Decks like this one, decks like the Agent, or the decks like the Kitty Pryde and the Thena, like those feel really good. That builds up massive power in small increments and giving that forward boost. I mean, it reminds me of the old days of Bishop, right? Getting Bishop, maybe Bishop returns to at least, I would even say, I can't say his is what he was, but maybe he just returns, like he comes into a deck in its own right. So I think, yeah, that's where it's going to work great. But my brew, and I haven't finished it yet, but it reminded me of Bass so much. I was like, okay, so Bass we used in a lot of creative ways. Don't see us using this with negative because it's deck, not hand, so a little awkward. However, the Iron Patriot, remember back in the day we had that Iron Man Patriot deck? Well, I'm like, all right, we've got Brood, we've got Sinister. Those are just 2 huge winners from this card. But then it's like, okay, Iron Man goes in that deck, Patriot, Mystique, okay, and then we start cooking, and then you can go with the Onslaught route to what you were saying, but there's also even like Ultron, not the end of the world if you have him low power, because you're able to do the crazy swarm of getting all the drones down. So I feel like that deck, because you have cards that naturally work into it, Misty, you can even get Misty Knight, like a standard Misty Knight, 1/4, then build it up with Patriot, Mystique. But the biggest one is Mysterio, right? So we've seen Mysterio have this mini Doctor Doom aspect with Bass. Well, now you've got yourself 12 power amongst 3 cards, and you put that into this Iron Man deck, in this Patriot deck. I think that might be my favorite home.
I actually like that a lot. Mysterio was one of those cards that, like, when Bass was kind of gaining in popularity, was being used like a mini Doctor Doom. And I like your call out on Patriot here, because Patriot itself gets a 3 power boost. Mystique gets a 4 power boost, right? And then maybe you run something like a Blue Marvel, and that gets a little boost too. And then all of a sudden you got a Patriot that's a 5. Like that's pretty huge, right? And it's also worth noting that in those types of decks, you said Mr. Sinister, Brood also makes those decks often as well. Brood being cut often now because of the prevalence of the new improved Ultron. But yeah, a lot of options there. I have to tell you, you kind of got onto like the brewing and the cooking a little bit. I got a bit of a cook too, and I think this is going to be one of the first places I go to with Agent Venom.
Okay.
He's forgotten, but it's the Mad Titan. If you think about it, those Infinity Stones, they're going to get buffed.
Yeah.
And they're going to get buffed a lot. And while you are starting, obviously, with a larger deck, it might be harder in theory to get Agent Venom in on turn 2. You are drawing through through things rather quickly. And suddenly, you're getting 1/4 stones. Like, could a Thanos Zoo style archetype make a bit of a comeback?
I think what worries me, first of all, I like this build. That's fun. We'll have to see some Thanos testing. I'm going to be looking out for that on your end. The thing that makes you just worried that I know it's going to kick me in the butt is I swear all the cards you're going to want to get that for are going to end up in your damn hand. That, like, it's the inconsistency of all that worries me a tad with the card in general. But I think the way you can design decks have it where it's just like a win-win no matter what.
Yeah, I think you design it around like less about Thanos, which I know they're trying to move towards Thanos more, but less around Thanos, more around Agent Venom, and then you have things like Devil Dinosaur, which would actually get buffed by it as well because it has a 3 power line, right? And then you'd go like Kazar, Blarvel, Kyera.
Zoo. Yeah, you just
like,
go Zoo.
Straight up Zoo, yeah.
Exactly, because Marvel Board, to your point, I mean, he just went down, so he gets even more love, from it as well. And Zoo just as like a staple is going to like it, clearly. You've got all these cheap one-cost cards. The ones that you just don't care that are in the deck or out, like if you have it in your hand, cool. If you don't, awesome. I think those are the ones that are going to work naturally best. And if you think about cards like Nightcrawler going up to a 4, it's like, man, sign me up. That sounds like it has, some pretty big boom to it. Now, they showed this on the trailer, and it kind of surprised me a tad, and I was thinking about it. I'm like, you know what? I think there is a cook here, and I want there to be a cook, because every time we come up with something for Destroy, and then it doesn't quite land. However, this time, you think about it, well, you've got a 1/4 Deadpool, which if you kill even once, you're getting a 1/8 out of it, and then you can continue to climb. Carnage gets marginal increase and Venom, but hey, marginal is marginal. It's not net neutral, right? And then you think about, you have Null, you've got Arnim Zola in there. You can start building up on these. Now, Nimrod and Death, those are the two that would take a hit. But more cards than not, I think, would actually like Agent Venom, and it kind of makes sense. Venom in the name, it could work here.
I think that's actually interesting. I hadn't considered Destroy, but you're right. Like Death and Deathlock, and like there's some of the only ones that actually have values over 4, really. Nimrod too, but you obviously just wouldn't run Nimrod in that deck, right?
Yeah.
You just do like much more of a Deadpool style Arnim Nola type thing. I like this call out. Even X-23, right?
And
Getting
Wolverine.
hit, then you can use that. Yeah. They all have relatively low stat lines because of the scalability.
It could all in theory work. And again, we've seen this. Like, we've tried to make this work. Will this be one that actually sticks? Can it be an off blend thing? I don't know. And that's what has me hesitant. I just think at the end of the day, this will be it reminds me of Baron Zemo a bit. Like in the season, for the season, people played it, and then as it went on, people played it less. Like, this is, at least even though we gave it a decent star, this is on my list as like not as exciting of a season pass card as you typically have because of its limitation, because of what I see in the casual player base. That's my initial worry here. But, you just heard us talk about Patriot. Heck, the Hood. I'd even mentioned the Hood. That was going to be in the Iron Patriot deck. You've got a -3 swing with the Demon. That's obviously, completely bonkers. Bounce, Kitty Pride decks. If those are your flavor, Zoo, then you're going to like the card. If it's not, then I think you can, probably safely pass.
Yeah, and one place where it actually kind of gets stepped on a little bit is it steps on the toes of Ravonna. A lot of the Ravonna cards and the Ravonna decks will not want to run Agent Venom for obvious reasons. And so that tends to take down its ceiling slightly, right? And that's simply the way Ravonna works, right? Ravonna doesn't take the base original cost into consideration. It takes the updated cost, and that'll knock that synergy out from Agent Venom.
Yeah, so we got Cerebro, Surfer, Destroyer, Kitty Pride packages, a little bit of Patriot here and there, and I'm sure there's going to be some other cooks. But long term, I think it'll be a fine card for those that enjoy the playstyle. Let's move on because we've got a lot of cards to talk about. Agent Venom being one of the more complex ones, which is why we spent the time. But next we've got Scream. And Scream is a 2/2. And with an ability of when an enemy card moves, you will steal 2 power from it once per turn. So let's start not saying anything. But the star rating, what do you got?
I'm going with definite 4 here. This is definitely a 4-star card. I think it's good. I think it's somewhat niche in its application. We've said that a couple times already. But I can already see the thumbnails. Mobster move is back, right? Because I think I think this is gonna do the same thing for that offensive attack movement style deck as Baron Zemo did for milling. Right? Yeah. This is going to be a key component to that Kingpin, Scream, Polaris style deck that we haven't had before. And we've been missing something from that deck. Those decks were good, but they weren't great. And they hadn't really kept up with the power creep that had existed in Snap. And now we got something coming for it.
Yeah, this might be. You did a good job just saying the rating and not moving on. I'm gonna give it a 4 too. This might be. There's one other one. This might be my favorite card of the month. I think so. I think I'm gonna go with 4, mainly because of this. And this might just be my 4. And I'll tell people, when we review it, if it's ultimately worth it. But I love when a new card comes in and allows you to play essentially a new archetype, which Scream is kind of doing. The stats are crazy. I mean, guys. If this red give a card 4 power each time, people would be losing their minds. It's a 2/6 after one move happens, right? That's insane because you are stealing that power, and it has to actively be in play. So it's legit could not be better in the sense of scaling and what that can provide. And there are so many movement cards. Who are we kidding? I mean, I would say more often than not, a card is going to have some type of movement in its deck. This is also the new Cosmo, the new Cassandra Nova, to Airshim, the new whatever you want to say. This is a firm counter against move decks, which I think is needed more in the top end of things. I think most importantly, Scream is going to make a lot of cards relevant that have not been, to your point, in the Mobster move set, in the Polarises, the Spider-Man. I'll keep, let's go through them all, right? Polaris, Spider-Man, we have Stegron. It is once per turn, but Magneto, Cannonball, and then, hey, listen. This is the month. This is finally the month. It's the month of Arrow. You get the 5/10 Arrow as well. There's more cards than not that can move, but even better, it creates this new offensive style of deck that we just haven't seen, and I think is going to be a lot of fun to play, and that's why I'm excited.
The buff to Arrow, I think, is indicative of Second Dinner's attempt to make this offensive move deck a reality. I think they knew Scream was coming, and I felt like they, in their test, were like, this is good, but we want Scream to land. We want things to land. I think that's been their goal with the most recent additions to the game. And so, we looked at what they did for move last month, and I feel like this offensive move package, suddenly they're like, okay, let's give Arrow a time to shine here. And that 5/10 stat line is actually amazing. A little bit disruption, but now you have Scream in there. It's a legit weapon.
Well, and if you think about it too, outside of just the insane stats Scream can get up to when played on curve, all that good stuff, is what the deck is doing, right? You're attacking your opponent. So it's like a mill deck where it's not just playing down good stats, like in Zemo's case, but you're also actively preventing or stopping or changing what your opponent wants to do. And that's where the most power comes from, in my opinion, right? It's going to be cool as just a base card to throw down with, all the Visions and the Jeffs and the Nocturnes of the world. But then also it's going to be really important because you get to move with Polaris. All of a sudden, Polaris becomes a much stronger card because of all that synergy. The curve line makes sense. Oh, maybe even stack that with Kingpin and you start really punishing them. And then I also like that if they happen to have Luke Cage, you still get some benefit out of it yourself by getting Scream bigger. So to me, Scream might be my favorite card of the month because what it'll allow you to play and then just being a good overall card.
I actually agree. It's my favorite card of the month as well. I think there's one that might be more meta impactful potentially, but I see this one actually elevating an archetype that needed it. This is the one I am most excited for this month for sure. And I think it's for the same reasons why you're stating here. And it's worth noting that Marvel Snap is all about taking small things and just corralling them into larger advantages. And that's exactly what Scream does, right? And I actually really do like the idea that we have cards like Polaris, who we've not talked about on this podcast since I don't remember one. Arrow, which I just make fun of you for. We don't actually play Arrow in real decks, right? And suddenly these cards are actually back in it a little bit, right? And I think it's really, really important to note that I do not see Scream as a tech counter to move. It's not a tech piece against move. So if move is really popular, you wouldn't play Scream the same way you would play a Mobius and Mobius if you want to counter discounting, or you play Cosmo against on reveals. I really do think it's an offensive piece, not a defensive piece.
I think it's both. I'll be fair. If you played on a Scream and they're playing a move deck, buddy, I think they're done. I think they get so high in power like a Dagger does that it won't care all the time. But it's gonna add up. Because you have your Scream plus things. I do think it is the word we love to say, a release valve, right? But I do think it's a little bit of a release valve there. It's not as black and white as Killmonger is offensive and defensive wise, but there is that trade-off. And sadly, that's what you need nowadays in Snap. It's crazy how just good stats, again, to your point, we used to talk about Spider-Man, Polaris, 3/5, woo! Doesn't matter anymore. You need cards like Copycat that do 5 things at once that really feel like they can snowball. And that is why Scream at least checks some of those boxes off.
Yeah, and of course, when you combine it with something like a Kingpin, suddenly you're like double dipping on that advantage, right?
Yeah, and again, like Cannonball, Arrow, you're displacing what they were doing, and you're stealing from them. And then Magneto, you're moving everything, and you're stealing from them, and you're moving things to a Magneto lane to make them lose, and then your Scream and another lane's going to go up in power. I think people are sleeping on Scream. I really do, just because of the style of deck that she's going to be in, and that's why I think she's got some really strong potential, and I'm excited to see what she can offer. So outside of Scream, we're going to move on because we keep having them. I will say this, Scream comes with Mobius, Man-Thing. Not a great week. Man-Thing's fine. Mobius is fine, but it's not like you're not jumping up and down. And that's how a lot of people feel about the next card we're going to talk about in Misery. Now, just looking at this card gives me nightmares, but we got a 4/7 on reveal. Repeat the on reveal abilities of your other cards here, and then destroy them. And I want to go ahead and read that one more time because it is confusing. They used to do a good job with card text. I think a couple of them lately, like Aranya, now this. Just a little bit on the confusing side. To me, this reads, on reveal, Misery's going to check for on reveal cards. If they're there, like an Iceman, she'll kill it, and then it's going to do the on reveal again, right? Or do the on reveal, and then she'll kill it, sorry. However, if there's a Nimrod there, which is why this is important, I don't think Nimrod's going to die.
No. I read it that way as well. That the only cards that will be destroyed are cards with on reveal text. The on reveal will happen first, and then the cards will attempt to be destroyed. From what I see, I believe armor would prevent the cards from blowing up. So if you want to like conserve a card while also reprocking their on reveal, you could in theory use something like an armor.
All right, so this time, just say the star rating. What do you have?
This is also a 4.
Oh, yes. I love that you gave it a higher ranking. Okay, I gave it a 2.5. Which
That's way lower than I expected.
Because here's the deal. This is what I was thinking, because I've been burned by a couple cards. And it's like, this to me reads as a super cool card. A lot of strong, like, highlight clips from it. But is it something that we actually need, right? Is it something that we need? Because I do have some points to kind of go for that case, and this is one of those I'd be happy if you were right and I was wrong here. I think there are some, like, essentially it's a discount Odin in some ways, and also it's an improvement on Deathlock. I don't think people will look at it that way, but it's a 4/7 that you can kind of target. Now, you can't do Nimrod, but you can target in different ways to set off, or you just have an Odin and you don't care what happens to those cards. Those are the pros. I just think overall, the risk reward, we've seen these type of cards before, and you got to have things work out. They don't always do, and so for that reason, I don't know if it will scale perfectly into, what we have in the game. But I'll let you go first. Tell me why you think it's a 4. What's the immediate synergy?
You know what? I do think that the reason why I'm leaning a little higher, originally I actually had 3 and I scratched it out and put a 4. The reason why is because I do think that Misery is going to require a whole different approach to destroy. If you think about traditional destroy, you use on reveals to destroy cards underneath that do not have on reveals of their own. You're talking about Deadpool. You're talking about Wolverine, right? Nimrod. All those cards do not have native on reveals. It's very unlikely that Misery goes into those style of decks. I also think the original stat line of Misery, which was a 5/10, I think they moved it to a 4/7 intentionally to essentially move it off of the Electro line.
Yes.
I think that it was too obvious of a play with Electro to Electro into Misery at turn 4 with a 5 cost Misery at 10 power, which I think was a premium play without question. Now that you have Electro at 3, Misery at 4 at 4/7, I think it's effectively a 3 power nerf to that lineup. And so that's what kind of brought me down a little bit. But what I'm interested in seeing is how the new deck building can work. I think that Null is largely a huge winner with Misery, because I think it's going to take a different approach to okay, what can we destroy to then benefit Null as the closer? Because Null's always been not as necessary. He's nice to have, but you could play Destroy without Null, right? And I think that you won't be able to play Misery without Null.
Yeah, so first, I'm glad you said that, because when she was a 5/10, I almost thought she was better in her one role of the ramp thing. She would have been the ramp card to have in all decks, just because getting that re-trigger at no extra craziness, it still is going to work in there. Don't get me wrong. I think she still just goes in the ramp decks. It's nice to have. You can do things with that. However, it dramatically now changes kind of some of what that looks like. I think it's interesting, though, that you can do some Arnim Zola stuff or whatever early, then play her even in that ramp build, and it destroys the Arnim Zola. You don't really care. It reactivates. There are some... This card has super unique decks, and then also yes, the new Null Destroy that is what I'm seeing from this season, trying to encourage some more ways to play Destroy rather than the, the vanilla way that we've been playing it. So I want to highlight Destroy some more, but what I want to bring up too is the off builds. Like when I read this, I was like, man, you know what's like, what are cards that I just don't care if they die, right? Like you get them out there and you play them in and they make sense. And it's like, okay, you've got things like a Darkhawk deck where if you throw out a Korg and Rock Slide and White Widow and Black Widow, all four of those cards, especially White Widow and Black Widow, talk about incredible, great curve. Man, you go White Widow, Black Widow, Misery, they're in misery at that point. Like it's titled to what you're doing and you're building up, and you can finish with this play too with like a 2-cost and then a 4-cost on turn 6.
Yeah, so imagine all the cards you wanted to hit with Grandmaster, right? That's kind of where I was thinking too. Like, what are the kind of cards you like hitting with Grandmaster? Ones that often have like smaller power levels but high impact, help clear the board, etc. Right? I actually do think that like those types of decks will work well with Misery because they actually work on curve too. Korg 1, White Widow 2, and then Black Widow 3, Misery 4. You clear your lane, reproc all those effects, and then like there's another card I want to talk about too. And this is a card that I think is absolutely slept on right now, especially considering how tight Marvel Snap's lines are getting. Imagine reprocking Iceman. Iceman twice. You don't get that Spider-Ham feedback that you're like, oh, got you, noob. You know what I mean? You don't get that feedback from Iceman, but they're feeling it on the other side. Every time you get someone plays Iceman against you, you're sad. You're like, oh, come on, seriously? But the card's not seeing play.
And not to mention, like, think about it. There's still 7 power here, right? So, like, if you're getting, let's say, we could call it Iceman and White Widow on there, and your opponent, it's like, you can put a Darkhawk to follow those, and that's why I think this thing does have cool potential on the off decks. It's going to ignore the Darkhawk completely, and then you're not losing all that power. Like, it destroys those cards, but at least you're still putting 7 on top of there. But then you're doing way more than that because you're doing more rocks, more whatever. And then White Widow's spitting out the Widow Kisses on the other side. Iceman's doing his thing. Like, I do think that is a build that I really think is interesting, either as a last turn or on curve play, depending on what that deck needs. And so that is the potential of this being way higher than a 2.5. I just feel like I've seen this. I've been burned by it. I get excited by cards like this, and then I get burned. But I don't know if we absolutely need something like this. But I hope we do.
I agree. Like, this is definitely the one that I might whiff on. I totally accept that. I'm just excited about the deck building landscape. And I was even trying to think to myself, like, okay, hold on. You know, like decks where you'd play junk and like you'd kind of tech Carnage into it to clean up some of the mess and stuff like that. I had a thought of like, okay, what about Misery? Like, what if you're playing Misery on the hood? Like, you know what I mean? What if like you're getting 2 demons, getting rid of the -3 power on your side? That's 12 power in demons for 2 cost. You know what I mean? Like that's a lot. That's a lot while also clearing some space on your side. So I do think that like it's going to take very deliberate deck building. This could absolutely fall on its face. But then you just move it to 4/8, and it's the best card in Snap.
And what's great is it's instead of killing the goblins, it just sends them back, and then if there's too much room, it eats it. Like, I love that it does the on reveal first. It's such a fun goblin interaction card that, like, you get best of both worlds. Kind of like a Nihilist, where you, like, yeah, you send it, then it blows up or whatever. Yeah, to your point. Good anti-claw card. Other cards that I was just thinking that, like, again, we just don't care if they, get deleted from the video game. Like, if you go with the ramp route or even just like in general, Jubilee, I think is very interesting at that point. Cool. Get rid of Jubilee. You get 2 cards down. Make sure the cards that come from Jubilee maybe can benefit from this as well. Shuri, it's like, all right, you got a 14 power, and then on turn 6, you could then do another double thing. Don't know if that will work out, but into the, final point is there are cards that it's okay. White Tiger, Namora, both of those, who cares, man? You kind of already did the thing you need to, especially on turn 6 as a finisher. Eat up that White Tiger, eat up that Namora. And I love 4-cost cards in the sense of turn 6 plays. We have so many great 2-cost cards. And so to kind of pair those up together, I'm going to leave off on this for this because I want you used to be the one that played these decks all the time. I try to revisit it. It's just fun. What do you think about the potential of the Beta Ray Thor hammers? I think of it as a different Odin. Could we see that?
Damn, you're catching me off guard. I had not considered Beta Ray Bill as a synergy with Misery. I gotta be honest with you. That's not a line I went down. Now you got me thinking though. Got me on the spot. I mean, if you think about it, you're reprocking the hammers, right? Destroying them. It's the destroy side that doesn't make sense. But I'm trying to think about what you could do with that extra 2 power. Is there a card that works well for 2 power in those?
I think armor belongs in the deck if you do go this route to protect the Thor and the beta anyway. But then also it's like even the last turn of the game, you're not dependent on Odin anymore. Like you at least have the way where it's like if you don't have, you could just play the hammers down with Misery. If she destroys them, who cares, right? You're adding 7 power. You're getting your other 2 lanes up. Typically beta and Thor kind of hold their own lane, so you can kind of construct it where the other lane's going to be kind of benefiting from these hammers, whatever, right? I feel like this could be a line.
Yeah, I think that like it could be tricky because it turns into a 2-card combo because you'd have to have the armor to protect the cards from just getting destroyed, right? Which could be potentially problematic, of course. I think that we should mention that with Electro, with Misery, you could in theory do an Arnhem Nola combo earlier, right? Because now you have a clean line to do Arnhem Nola in 6 turns.
So we'll have to see where she ends up landing. But it'll be fun when we rank all the cards at the end and kind of where we see them working out. However, I will say before we move on, War Machine and Namora are the cards with her. So here's the problem. That's a insane, such a good week. War Machine just got nerfed. He's probably safe for a while. Still a very good card. Namora is the card. That's what I love about it.
Yeah, Namora you have to have. War Machine's good. I was actually surprised that whole archetype with War Machine only got the 1 power taken off, didn't get touched up elsewhere. I think War Machine's a fantastic card. Absolutely fantastic, even at its post-nerf state. Definitely worth getting. And Namora, we've talked about Namora so much. And here's the thing, if you don't roll for Namora now, you're never going to spend the tokens on it. Like, I know you just won't. You won't. You know you won't. You won't spend 6,000 tokens on Namora. This is your chance.
That is a good point. Like, if you're not doing it now, then forever hold your peace, right? This is the time to grab it. Well, let's move on. We've got Scorn, who is a 1/2, and very interesting because this card did get itself a change, and some of the people would look at it as a nerf, but definitely its mechanics changed a good amount. So it's a 1-cost, 2-power card. When you discard this, return it to your hand and give +2 power to itself and one of your cards in play. It used to give whatever power she had. She'd get 1 power each turn, and then she would give her power to a card in play, which I liked a lot better. But we've got this new ability to it. It's given +2 power. It's gaining the +2. What do we think about Scorn?
So this is the one that I've had a really hard time with. Because I think I'm gonna carefully say this. I think this is gonna be a 4-star card as a whole. 5-star in discard though. But I like in discard specifically, I think it's going to be a whole new beast because I just love what it's doing. It completely flips the end of the game on discard, which I really like. And I think we've needed for a while. However, of all the cards we're talking about, it's very, very niche. The next one is kind of niche too, but this is very, very, very niche. Where like you're really only playing it in one kind of deck. You're not playing this everywhere. You're really not. You're not playing this as it's a Black Bolt Stature combo. This is the release valve for it. No, you're playing this in straight up discard. But if you actually look at the power it's outputting as a 1-cost, a scaling 1-cost, scaling 1-costs have been some of the most powerful cards in Marvel Snap. And the landscape of design is so limited with 1-cost. Like, how much can you possibly do? I feel like when you look at this text, how much more could you want a 1-cost to do? You know what I mean? It seems like it's going to be extremely impactful.
Yeah, it's like we're going to talk Toxin next, and as he is the balance, this is the discard. I think both those cards in their respective archetype is perfect. And yeah, I'm seeing like some lackluster takes on the card, and I get it, maybe as a whole, but in discard, it just doesn't get better, especially because it's a card that's safe from the action of getting rid of it, right? It's coming back stronger, better, and like Meek is great, but if you get it late, like at least this can still do something for your deck. And I'm gonna get this card for no reason alone except that I just want to play more Gambit machine gun decks, and this is like the greatest Gambit machine. It seems like a better Swarm in a lot of areas. It also seems like, I don't want to say a better Meek because they're so different, but I like what this one is designed to do and the way that it's going to work out. And it's quite honestly a little bit surprising. I wonder if it's going to show the +2 it gains as it, we've seen that with like Deadpool and stuff. If your opponent's going to have to like keep track of it, like, oh, they might have a score and how many discard, like, all those little mental math things do play into how these cards perform.
Yeah, I would expect it to be just like Apocalypse, Red Hulk, right? I think it's going to display it for sure. With regards to Meek, I think the advantage of Meek is that, like, Meek's actually still good. We just don't see very often right now. There's been so much power creep in the game. Yeah. But, like, Meek is great because you play it on 1, and it sits there and it does its thing. With Scorn, you're not playing it on 1. Scorn has to remain in your hand. So in order to actually get the full value of Scorn, you have to plan for that card coming out eventually. You have to play it by turn 5 or 6. Whereas with Meek, it's on the board already on curve. And so Scorn, while it's going to be impacting the board because of the +2s, it affects your curve slightly, because you're going to want to account for that extra 1 energy on turn 5 or 6 to get that power on board.
Yeah, so for me, you gave it a 4 and a 5. I think, yeah, it's like if you play discard, this is the no-brainer, and so it's almost no point giving a star rating outside of that, because that's where you're playing it. You know, I call it, I guess, like at that point, flexibility is low, so I'll give it like a 3. But yeah, I do think it's a 4.5 to, you know, imperative card, maybe 5. Sable was to bounce, is another 1-drop. Scorn is to discard. Not a lot to talk about outside of that with her. I mean, obviously, I think the APOC decks are kind of cool and how that's going to work. Swordmaster just got a buff that is going to synergize directly with this as well. Blade and Gambit, those are mine. Before I show this, I want to say, the meta we're in Snap is so weird. If this was a few months ago, we'd be going crazy about this card. Like, you need just such insane power now, like, to really, like, +2 is marginal if you look at it, but you can abuse this. And I think just on top of how discard works as a whole, when you combine this with looking at all the cards that as a turn 5 MODOK play, because I do want to see if MODOK likes this coming back. Like, do you remember when we had that Proxima Midnight when she came out? It's like, you got Wolverine, you've got all these cards that you hit with the big discard, Morbius goes up, Midnight's out there, now Scorn's given +2, and then you have your APOC building, Dracula. You've got all these things that it's okay to draw it late. It also is going to benefit what's on the board. If you draw it early, it's great. I think that it just makes the pinnable discard way better, which is why I totally agree with your. If you get this card, if you play discard, period. If you have a gold-plated discard cards in your collection, get this card.
The last thing I'll put on you here with this is what I've been wrestling with. I'm not sure if this is the case, but is it a backup plan for Apocalypse? Like, if you think about it, you have Dracula on turn 4, you've been hitting Scorn a whole bunch, you never top deck Apocalypse. Is Scorn high enough that it's still worth hitting with your Dracula?
Yeah, probably, because then it gets another +2. So I think it's also just like there's definitely like a line that you could play. I think what sucks the most is you're gonna want to just target this card too with your tokens. It is Jean Grey and Sebastian Shaw. I mean, just what a whiff of a week, man.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if the card's actually super good and they did this on purpose. Sometimes they bait us like that. They're like, yo, the best. You can almost rank cards based on like how crappy their spotlight companions are, right? Yeah. Like, hey, we know you want this, so here's some absolute dog feces, you know what I mean? But I do think that like for free to play, this is like easily the most skippable week. Like, there's no question. If you're free to play, like you're just skipping this.
You're skipping this. And it's funny, Shaw's in it because in the world, this could be played maybe in a deck that isn't pure discard, and then Shaw gets boosted up and all that stuff. You know, yeah. I think that's very hard to pull off. We move on to Toxin, which is the Scorn to discard, but it is now to balance. I said that a little messed up, but you get the point. It's a 2-cost, 1 power card. On reveal, return your other cards to your hand, such as Beast does, and +2 power to Toxin for each card returned. Meaning if you just do it once on a full lane, it goes up to a 2/7, which we know is a pretty good stat line. But even more so, the best part about it is it allows the insane snowball and new addition to bounce.
Yeah, so this here is the one that I think, like, I don't think this is a clear-cut 5. Like, this is what I think is going to be potentially the best card of the month. You know what I mean? But I'm not as, like, sold in saying, like, 5 stars, you know what I mean? Like, I can see where its limitations are, but I think for bounce, this is great. Like, this is absolutely great. And now the changes to Beast make more sense because you can Beast this. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. You can do a lot of stuff with this card, and I do think that it's going to be impactful. It's going to be very similar. Like, I want to say this is my 5-star, but at the same time, I think ultimately it's probably a 4-star with 5-star appeal and bounce, very much like we just spoke about with Scorn.
No, this is a 2-star card in my hands, and in the hands of someone like Jeff Hoagland or someone like who's insane with bounce, it's a 5-star card. Like, I think that's the best way to say it for myself. Like, I think Toxin is going to be, for some, the most favorite card they've ever had. No, just to chain off with Beast and Falcon. So I don't expect it to fall flat. For everybody else, it's just not going to be a flexible card. Maybe we'll see it as an anti-clog card or, anti-whatever. And it is okay on its stats, and you are returning the cards to your hand. Now, notably, the cards going back to your hand can't really do... they don't have reduced cost. They don't get power themselves. So maybe you chain this up with something like Black Swan, and then you can now activate her. The cards go back to your hand. But this is just to get the engine going even more, right, Alex? Like, the 1-cost cards, who cares if they don't gain anything. You have Hawkeye, you've got Silver Sable, you've got all these cards. I just love to see this, and that is where it's going to be frightening.
Yeah, it's additional power in an archetype, and additional power early too. The fact that it's 2 powered, I think is interesting because like it allows you to set up a bit of a board, and then you can sneak it in on turn 4. You know what I mean? You could play like a couple 1-drops and then sneak it on turn 4, bring them back to the hand, play the 1-drops again, beast them on top of the toxin itself, and then do it again. You know what I mean? Like it gives us extra kind of like extra bounce. It's super bounce. There's bouncing all over the place happening, right? And so I do think that the play lines are difficult. I can't wait to release that video, and then like, you almost bait the comments just by playing poorly.
I'll play it wrong for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. And the lines are so confusing because like if you don't play a lot of bounce, like you're playing suboptimally. Even if you think like, damn, I played that game so well, someone who really plays bounce is like, bruh, from turn 1, you had it all wrong.
Yeah, right. I mean, only 12. Like we have 12 cards in a deck. I'm curious to see if Falcon Beast and Toxin are all in there with what cards, right? Because it's the ones that really benefit. Is it the Sables? Is it the Rocket Raccoons? Like who ends up making it in those decks? Falcon is usually not played on 2, so I actually really enjoy this one fitting in as a 2 cost as well. Super unique. But yeah, I mean, looking at the board, guys, Silver Sable, Iceman's spectacular. Another way to get Korg back if you want to go with the Darkhawk bounce that had its day in the sun. You had Nico doing its thing crazy. I don't know. Hood coming back twice. I'm scared. I'm scared for this in the right hands. It's why we saw the preemptive changes to Beast, and now we're going to see the repercussions because of it.
Bro, no love for Mantis? What is this now? You're not cooking with Mantis Toxin? Damn. It's
Agent
worth noting
13,
it is with Zabu and Elsa Bloodstone. Elsa's probably going to be a pretty good interaction here, but I don't know if Elsa makes these decks, honestly, because Elsa hasn't really been making a lot of those bounce-based lists. But Zabu's interesting because we're like a month ahead here, but there's a chance that Zabu gets changed to an activate by this time. Like Zabu's seeing some experimentation with like Symbiote Spider-Man and the most recent buffs that happened there, but if they're going to make Zabu an activate, it'll happen on this week. So kind of keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, they said it seemed like it was too strong, but you can't just leave him where he's at. And he's in this spotlight week, so we're going to have to see there. I love how Scorn and Toxin is just like, all right, archetype lovers, here's your card, but they're with not the best. All right, next up we have what I would like to call the cozy card in the sense of this is one of those abilities that get me going crazy, and I love it. But we've got a 4-cost, 6-power card, kind of that standard Iron Lad line, if you will. On reveal, set the cost and power of your deck's top card to 0, and oh boy, this is a interesting one for sure with an on reveal ability that gives some crazy games and or situations and combos that can play out. So right off the bat, guys, I think that this card is all over the place into what it can land on. I want to say this, Alex. Actually, let's give our star ratings, then I'll kind of go off here. What are you thinking?
This is the one where I'm most likely to get my cheeks clapped, but I'm going to go 3. I feel lower on it.
Okay.
I feel lower on it, but like you're going to have to play Howard the Duck. So that's kind of where I'm like feeling it. You know what I mean? If you're going to put Howard the Duck in your deck to make this like a confident play, then like, bruh, you know what I mean? That's kind of where I'm at.
I want to give this, I know, I want to give this like a 4. Like, I want to give it something better because we just don't know. But this will be one, we see these from time to time that we have to get our hands on it and playing it out to see how it lands ultimately. Obviously, we always give our rankings off of what we have. So I'll go a little higher in the 3.5, like almost 4 range, because I think we're overthinking it a little bit. I do want to say that I think this card just generically with a lot of cards makes sense and works, especially because right off the bat, how do we not talk about it? Luke Cage and Shadow King, both these can revert the effect of the cost, the power on the cards that are affected. So getting like, a free last out of nowhere, onslaught play and your opponent, it was like, wait, I didn't think they were going to do that or whatever it might be, or Luke Cage bringing everything back up. I think this could have some major potential in what it can do by design and decks that might like it. So it's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, I know. And that's kind of what gives me some pause because like how is not getting a card to cost like 0 not amazing, but the power's still 0. So like we start to think about the deck build. It's like, okay, the deck starts to build itself. You have Luke Cage, you have Howard the Duck. And then like, you're also technically nullifying a draw here, right? And so like not nullifying a draw, you're still drawing it, of course, But like you're committing one of your draws to be a 0 power, 0 costed card, right? And then like so all of a sudden your hand becomes like thinner because you want to just play that card. It's kind of like what's the free location, the prison thing? What is it called? You get the free 6-drop, and then like, hey, nice. And it gets added to your hand though. If it got drawn into your hand, then like your hand would feel thinner. You know what I mean? I'm not saying we're playing Crystal, but
I don't even know if we would play Howard. I get it. Like, I understand. Like, but we've tried this before, and it's like, okay, and now Howard now has the chance to be the card that's the top deck. It's 4 cost, so it's so high up there that I'm like, by that time, you see what's in your hand. You can kind of look at what's in your deck, and if it's worth playing it at that time, you already built your deck around it. So why have Howard in the first place? I will say, though, there are decks when things are kind of starting to shine, like Jubilee, like these kind of like just going off the top deck, America Chavez, whatever, right? You build up this like top deck in a sense, kind of not a great name for it. That's where I see it going, and I just think we might be overcomplicating this card to where you can just make it work.
Yeah, I can see that too, but like the line I kind of see in my head, which I think is kind of silly, is Howard the Duck on 1, Zabu unironically on 2, because now you can see what is your top deck, right? And then you can have Anti-Venom at 3 costs. You're like, oh man, we got Doomers. We gotta get that Doomers, right? And then so you play the Anti-Venom on turn 3, and then you get that Doom on turn 4. But again, it's top decked, 0 cost. But now your hand is like, what? What are you holding in your hand? Because you've played 1, 2, 3. So like that's kind of the question I have for myself. I obviously would have been overpowered as hell if it was, you know, set the cost and power of your deck's top card to 0, draw the card. You know what I mean? Like that would have been absolutely stupid.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that like I'm trying to think through these lines, and particularly on Anti-Venom, I find myself stumbling a little bit.
He's terrifying in the sense of when someone plays this, and if they don't play that card on turn 5, you're just like, what are they holding on to? Like, what do they have? It's like the raft, you know, where like you full send the raft, and it was a bad idea because of course they, you know, top deck the best thing. I mean, right off the bat though, Iron Man, Mystique, Patriot, Tribunal, Taskmaster, Shuri, these kind of the stuff we looked at with Agent Venom a little bit. All these have good potential. Zola, Null, Blob, these 0 cards, all of those are great. These are all great cards to have as just a set baseline, right? It is set, so it's going to be interesting how it does interact. Like, Valkyrie also can reset it if you want to work into that. Why the hell is that deck being played? I think it has some interesting lines. We're going to have to see how kind of it all works out.
Yeah, you can even turn Wasp, you know, into a 0 cost, 0 power card.
Whoa. And last but maybe least, or certainly not least, whatever way you look at it, we've got a new game mode that also introduces a new card. It's called High Voltage, and this is so interesting. 3 rounds only, 3 turns only. Each player gets a random amount of energy, so it's just going to be a 5-6 cost fest of craziness. It's temporary. It comes out, I believe, October 18th. The rewards look promising, and in there you get yourself a cool Iron Man variant, but also a new card in Agony. So first up, let's just talk about the game mode. I think, you know, for me, I want to open with this, Alex, just like how Deadpool's Diner was. If they don't plan on reusing this, I just would rather all this time to go towards a game mode that's going to stay in the game rather than all the work that goes behind these temporary game modes. I get what they're trying to do, but my initial impression, I'm like, cool, just leave it in rotation. You know, whatever. I don't know. I feel like Deadpool's Diner is like gone forever at this point, too.
Yeah, I've had that concern too. In my head, I was like, man, I hope that's like the interns working on this or something like that. You know, it's like a kind of a project they're working on. It's like, hey, this actually worked, guys. Good job. Let's release it type thing. I mean, hopefully it's better than that. I mean, they have super talented interns, of course. But what I'm trying to say, though, is I agree with you 100%. You know, we're really waiting for that draft mode. I still fantasize about that auto battler mode, right? And I think that, but honestly, my first impression, I'm like, this actually looks cool. It's weird because it's like a snappier Snap, right? It's like a faster version of Marvel Snap. But I think the mechanics are interesting. The random energy is fascinating from a deck building perspective. It's also synchronous to each player. So like, it's not like one player's gonna have 1 mana and one person's gonna have 5. Well, I could have man, imagine they did that. Reddit posts would have written themselves. I actually think it looks pretty good, to be honest with you. And the rewards seem fair, so.
I like that it's random, but yeah, because you can't like purely deck design around like the set amounts. But yeah, oh dude, if it was like you get 2, you get 5, you get 2, they get 5 again, and it's like, yeah, that would be a terrible experience. But yes, limited time game mode. It comes the 18th, but the reward for playing it is Agony, and Agony is a 1-cost, 2-power card, and this is still in data mines a bit. But what we have now is after you play a card here, merge this with it. And the best way to think about this is it's a Hulkbuster that you play first, and it's going to go into that card. It's not going to turn into it. You can still benefit off of it a little bit. It's not the symbiote Spider-Man. So that is what it is in its concept. I kind of wish it was activate. Still could be, but this is what we got.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like this being an activate card would have been cool. In some ways, it kind of feels like Power Crept Hulkbuster. Like, yeah. I don't know if it actually is, but like, why would you play Hulkbuster? Like, for a very marginal gain here. From a star rating perspective, I'm leaning like an unenthusiastic 4. Like, I almost want to say 3. But like, I kind of expect it to be a 4 because I think there's a couple synergies here that are really good with it. And we can get into those. Like, I mean, Deadpool, right? Obviously loves being played on top of something like this, but we're also getting a card earlier that really likes Deadpool too. Then you have like, okay, I do think Move's going to like this too with what we're seeing here. Because if you think about it, you have Aranya, which is on an activate card, and then you do Madam Web, and then you can do Agony and Human Torch. And then when you use Aranya, and then you have the merger, it should, because it's like after, you should merge and then move the Human Torch, if my my shoddy memory serves me correctly. But yeah, so I do think there is some potential synergies here. It's just going to make like those early rampers just kind of ramp up faster in their power.
Yeah, and it's not going to work with Brood because Brood will go out, then it will go to the main Brood, things like that. I think I agree. I think it's a 3-ish, 3.5 star card that we do need on a 1-cost slot. So I do think there's a need here. I think there are decks that will like it. Scarlet Spider is an obvious one that's going to love this card. Clearly, I mean, Namora decks is interesting as well. Just like a way to work with Namora. And then clearly Sebastian Shaw BP. I think this could make its way in Surfer because of some of the cards that you have in there. It's not as near exciting as Cassandra Nova.
Yeah, I'm going to bring my rating down to 3. I don't want to go 4. I'm going 3.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think there's just, like, there are the cards in the decks that it's going to like, but we've seen with Scarlet Spider that there's just, like, those decks, if you get the lines, work really well. This could just be a good destroy card at the end of the day, and that's why it was designed, and it's a symbiote, and it works into that. And now at this point, we've got symbiotes from, you know, Agony to Carnage to Venom to Misery, right? And we got to go all the way up the symbiote line now. So, again, it's not the most exciting reward, but I do think that this will be an important part of deck designing in the future, and obviously it's worth getting if it's a free card in a fun game mode. That's going to be an obvious.
Yeah, we actually shouldn't pass up on that. Like, this is a free to achieve card. That is important, right? I don't know if you guys know this, but Marvel Snap makes money off its cards, right? Like, indirectly. It might be a surprise to you, but giving away cards is not something that Marvel Snap is known to do. They did it once. It was Cassandra Nova. That card absolutely slapped. I don't think this is as good as Cassandra Nova, not even close. But guess what, guys? It's free. It's free. So that's worth something, right? And I still think it has some potential. It could work with something like a Black Panther, which recently got buffed. And very important as well, Scarlet Spider could use a little bit of love too. And I think that this kind of card could work well with Scarlet Spider. So I think there are some synergies. It might not be the absolute like blow off the top banger card, but then when they make it, like I keep saying this, but then they just make it a 1/3. And then it's like, oh damn, this card is cracked.
Now this could be the hardest we've ever had to do it, but let's rank it from the bottom to the top. Worst cards, the best cards this season. Starting at the bottom, I've got Misery. Who you got?
Man, at the bottom? Okay, I think I'd go Agony at the bottom, honestly.
Oh yeah.
Did you give your star rating on Agony? I don't think you gave.
Yeah, I said 3. I said 3.
You did say 3?
Yeah.
I'm gonna update my notes here, bud.
Agony would be next.
Yeah. Okay. So I go Agony and then probably Anti-Venom.
Okay. After that, I would say as far as like an impact, because Scorn and Toxin, that's where this is tough, right? Because it's like, how do they affect the meta as a whole? I'll go Anti-Venom just because the Boomer Bust is too risky for now.
Yeah, for me, it's hard. It's hard for me. I think, oh man, I don't want to say Misery here because I feel like Misery might be really good, but I think that Misery has the highest risk. I'm going to go Misery.
Okay. For the player base, like if I was looking at the top 100 players, next step for me would be Scorn, I think.
I would go Scorn. Scorn, I agree.
And then for me, it would be Toxin.
You said it before, Scream's probably your favorite. Now that we went through the whole thing, like at first I was kind of like ho-humming about Scorn. I was ho-humming about Toxin. But I think you're right. I think Scream might actually be the one I'm most excited about.
At least in the fun category and building a new deck and being competitive against other decks and being an offense and defense card, I have Scream at the top, followed by Agent Venom, followed by Toxin, then Scorn. Then I believe I had Agent Venom, Agony, and Misery. That was my list.
I don't remember what I said now because it's 7 cards, but like honestly, what you just said here makes perfect sense to me. Like we might be in total agreement. Last month we were like almost polar opposites. I think we're much more aligned this month.
Yeah, the only one I think we were like Misery, I think, is you were going for more of the boom. I was going for more of the bust, but outside of that, yeah, we were pretty much in line there. And then, to end things off, I know it's a long one, but the OTA, listen, didn't even get its own category. Pretty much a nothing burger. You had a weird hella change. You had a +1 power here or there. Whoop-de-doo. Nothing too crazy to talk about OTA-wise.
The OTA was weird because like I think that it was a large OTA from like an actual breadth standpoint. They changed a lot of different cards. It was interesting to see that they felt the need to buff additional move cards. Now obviously Craven trying to compete with the likes of Madam Web or whatever, that makes sense. But it surprised me to see Hercules as part of that because Hercules is seeing play in like the Tribunal style movement bounce style decks, not bounce but bouncing because of the Hercules, right? In terms of Hela, it's weird because the best versions of Hela already had Luke Cage in them, and so to see Hela get 1 power buff, I was like, it's kind of funny. I was like talking about it, and at the same time, like in theory it is a nerf because like the cards are weaker across the board and it's no longer just a Hela combo. You have to have Luke Cage in there as well, and if you don't have Luke Cage, then like even if you have Hela, like you might have to actually retreat, which Hela has never been in the situation of before. You know what I mean? But Hellcow's still so cracked. I don't know, man. That OTA was weird. Not the most. I don't know. If you had to guess, hey Alex, what's in this OTA? I'd have gotten it all wrong.
Yeah, to me, I just feel like with Activate coming out, all that hype, and if you look, we're going to be waiting until about mid-October for another patch, another change. I'm like, this should have been the one where we got more Activates. I was really hoping we got more Activates, more flavor, more fun. Pokemon Pocket just came out in soft launch. That is going to be a competitor. I said we, at least touch on it. I think we'll have a larger subject on it, maybe in another Snapchat in the future. But, there is going to be people that are going to be going towards that. I mean, we see creators all over it right now. I think that's going to be healthy, though. I think Snap does need some friendly competition. You never want one gas station, man. They can do whatever they want. You need to have, 2 going at the same time. Whatever, whatever you look at in the economy. It's just good overall. And so, interesting month. I think, to me, this is not the least excited I've been about a month, but I'm not like crazy. I'm not just crazy about all these cards. I think they will be largely up to debate and testing, and we're gonna get our eyes on the next month, and we got some really strong looking cards that probably will get adjusted, but with Finrare and some other ones that we'll talk about later, maybe this is a month to save up for a lot of players.
Yeah, so like these cards will probably be fine, but they're taking less chances than they did last month. Last month seems like they really tried to take some chances with, the cards, their impacts on the meta and stuff like this. I still think there's some interesting stuff here. And I do think that like, something like a Misery, once, top tier deck builders get their hands on it, there might be a completely different look on that card after a week of its launch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I do agree with you, generally speaking. I find myself slightly less excited with some of the design here, but still, I think there's a lot here to like.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to be going over to Alex's side and talk about September season in a review, the best token shop buys in the Snapchat mailbag. Again, we're going to be reminiscing on the 100 episodes and our 2 years and about, 4 episodes from this point on. I've got to get, sadly, back over to the hospital, sleeping on the beautiful, nice pull-out couch. It's great. I love it. It's good for the neck and all. Anyway, guys, have a good one. Have a great one. Good luck out there in the new season. Until the next one, happy snapping.